This nail gun built the garage I'm standing in, and although I'm not a professional framer, I've personally fired over 6,000 nails through this in the past few months, so I feel like I can give a little bit of an educated review on it. Before we get into the pros and cons of this nail gun, let me give you a couple specs on it. Of course, it is the 20 volt max framing nailer, part number DCN692. Comes with a 4 amp hour battery in the kit, however, I typically run it with the 5. Dewalt advertises it'll run about 700 nails in with the 4 amp hour, and I believe that actually. I usually go through a battery a day when I was doing framing on this project. The clip will hold 55 paper collated nails. The nails have to be 30 to 34 degrees. It'll shoot 2 to 3.5 inches in length nails and diameter of 0.113 to 0.131. If you forget any of that, luckily they have it printed right on the side of the gun. Here's the gun up close. Of course, it's got Dewalt's signature grip, which I personally am a big fan of. The loading mechanism is on the left side of the gun. Pretty easy. Just pull back this slide, grab your clip of nails, goes in right from the back, and then press down on the slide, spring locks, and loads everything in there. On the top of the gun is a depth adjustment wheel, and this basically sets the head of the nail relative to the surface of the wood that you're nailing into. Works very well, I've found. I did a lot of sheathing nailing with this, which is where that's really important. On the top, there's an anti-jam lever, which to be honest, I ever only had to use a handful of times. Moving to the other side of the gun and sort of related to the anti-jam lever, there is a light that indicates when the gun is either overheated or jammed. And I don't think I ever actually even saw that light come on. Next to the light are a couple of controls. One is for either single fire or multi-fire nailing, and the other one is for motor speed. There's a 1 and a 2 speed. I personally keep it on 2 speed all the time. I'm usually driving 3+ inch long nails, so I need the extra power. If you're driving something like a 2-inch nail into subfloor, maybe you only need speed 1. I also keep this in the multi-fire nailing position, which I guess it could also be called bump firing. In this mode, the motor just runs continuously when you have the trigger depressed and will just keep firing one nail after another. It doesn't have quite the speed of the pneumatic nailer when it comes to bump firing, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And finally, the gun features a plastic rafter hook which fits nicely over a 2x4. This did come in handy. I know most guns use metal, but I actually thought this was fine and hasn't broken on me yet. I've seen a few reviews say that this doesn't have enough power to drive long nails, but I disagree with that, and I'll show you here quick a little demo. I got some 3.5 inch ring shank nails, a couple pieces of pine scrap, and I have this on bump fire mode. This first one needs maybe a tap with the hammer, but the other two are pretty much flush. Overall, I had no problems with getting full depth nails while I was driving in our normal framing lumber. If you're still in disbelief, here's me nailing through a triple LVL. Now let's talk what I like and what I don't really like about this nailer. Let's address the first obvious one. No cord, no air hose, and no generator needed to run an air compressor. That is a huge benefit just by itself. We didn't have power in this place till a month after it was framed up. So being able to frame this entire floor with just a battery was awesome. And don't forget about the other aspect of running a generator and air compressor. It's just constant background noise all day. And you don't have to deal with that annoyance and the gasoline fumes and paying for gasoline to run it. The next thing I really like about this gun is the tool-free easy depth adjuster. This works very well for fine tuning where that nail head sits relative to the surface of the wood, and this is important in tasks like sheathing where you really don't want to overdrive your nails. Every overdriven nail is less capacity that panel can hold. And in our case with zip system sheathing, the outside of that panel forms our weather resistant barrier. So every time you overdrive a nail, you're puncturing that WRB and thus letting more water into your structure potentially. This is what an overdriven nail looks like. This is what a properly driven nail looks like, and that is easily adjusted with the depth adjuster on this gun. Next, let's talk about batteries. I'm already on the Dewalt battery system, so it makes sense for me to use this gun. They do make adapters so you can mix and match batteries and tools, but I haven't ventured into that realm yet. Like I talked about before, Dewalt advertises 700 nails on one 4 amp hour battery, and I think that's probably just about right. Like I said, I am not going through many batteries a day when I'm running this thing all day. Granted, I'm not a production framer, but I still shot hundreds if not thousands of nails a day when we were framing the walls of this structure. And the last pro I wanted to mention about this tool is the weight. I almost listed this as a con, but actually when I picked up my old Pazload F350, it feels about the same. I was pretty surprised. The advertised weight of this with a battery is about 9.4 pounds, I believe. The advertised weight of this as a bare gun, remind you, not dragging an air hose around either, is about 8.4 pounds. So there's about a pound heavier on the cordless tool. Not having that cord tangled around whatever stud or rafter you're trying to climb around is a huge benefit, and it's one that I'm willing to accept an extra pound of weight for. Now, pro framers that are committed to as fast as they can production framing probably would still want to stick with the air gun, not only for the faster bump fire rate, which I mentioned earlier, but the fact that you do have a little bit less weight, and if you're going to be doing this every day of your life, you want the lightest possible gun you can be holding. All right, now let's talk about why you probably clicked on this video, which is the negatives about this nail gun. I can say for sure I have one top negative point about this gun, and its nail capacity. The advertised nail capacity is 55 nails. However, a standard paper collated strip of Pazload nails is 40 nails, which means you can only hold one clip at a time, and you're gonna be reaching for your nail pouch a lot when you're using this gun if you're doing any sort of production framing. A standard pneumatic gun holds at least 2 clips of nails, and that makes a big difference when you're up on a roof nailing away and you don't have to worry about running out every 5 seconds. Another sort of annoying thing about loading nails into this gun, which is kind of a personal preference thing, is some guns allow you to stick the nails in the back. When you pull the release lever back, it will just clip onto the nails that you just put in, and you're good to go. However, this one you do have to remember to pull this back first, put the nails in, and then release it. Not really that big of a deal, but just something to note. The second sort of annoying feature of this gun is completely inherent to the design, and that is the fact that it's a flywheel powered gun. That means when I squeeze the trigger, a motor starts spinning a heavy flywheel up, and when the gun fires, the energy from that flywheel is released into a pin that drives the nail. The issue with this is there is a slight delay from the time that you actually hit the trigger to the time the nail can fire. If you try to fire before the gun is totally spooled up, you're either gonna misfire or the nail's not gonna be driven completely in. Now, we weren't in a massive hurry when we were framing, so I always just let the gun spool up, and it was really no big deal. It worked fine. But I've seen a lot of others report about misfires in this gun, and I think a lot of it is due to that exact reason, that the flywheel is not fully spooled. The only time this gun is sure to misfire is if there's not adequate pressure on the nails from the spring-loaded lever holding them in. This almost always happened if I try to load more nails than capacity. Now, in contrast, if you look at the Milwaukee version of this tool, it uses a totally different design internally that uses a spring-loaded mechanism that retracts after the previous nail, so that when you're ready to pick this thing up and nail it, it's ready. That spring just releases all of its energy, drives the nail, and it reloads. The crew I hired to help finish framing used these Milwaukee nail guns, and I got to shoot a few nails out of it, and I think if I were to do a ton more framing, I might even think about trying that one out as well. And the last negative thing I was gonna say about this gun was the weight, but really after thinking about it more, it actually is fine. I mean, yes, it is a little bit heftier, but at the end of the day, it's just a better workout. And to be honest, the nail capacity and the flywheel thing are really the only 2 major negative issues I had with this gun. Like I said, I was gonna mention weight, but that turned out to be sort of a non-issue. And so overall, I'm actually really pleased with this tool. I thought it was a pretty good value for what it is, and just not having to drag that air compressor and hose around is an absolute game changer. If you think you deserve one of these guns, check out the link below and watch this video if you want to see us actually using this thing to frame.